Well, first of all, her battery died in my driveway, and I got her going. I jumped the battery. And then she got over to O'Reilly's, and she called, and she said, I forgot, somebody hacked my credit card, and I had no money.
Oh,
So I
my
had to go to
God.
O'Reilly's and give her my credit card. It's kind of been one of those days.
Yeah,
But
well,
Diane, all I can think of is what would they do without you? You know, I'm really.
Sometimes I wonder.
Well, I'm telling you, because, I mean, you know,
And I spent most of the day with Denise. She went to the doctor.
how's she doing this week?
Oh, she's bad. I couldn't find my comb, so my hair looks like a mess.
you know what,
No,
right?
it does not just shake it. No, she, you know, she's very low in iron, and there is no iron, and she's got the hole in her foot again, and her stomach is terrible, and she had a neuropathy, cranial headache that lasted 12 hours today. Let's see, she hasn't slept, she hasn't slept, she didn't sleep all night again, and she slept 2 hours the other day. It just goes on and on and on. She's just a walking medical problem.
Sleep pretty well.
Oh, I do.
I
sleep
drop
very
off.
well.
I never remember going to sleep. I've been on there all the time.
Well, you don't, if you're watching anything, you probably don't
Yeah,
remember the
I
end.
sit
That must be.
say prayer, and I just didn't talk.
You have trouble sleeping?
Oh, yeah, I can't go to sleep. I've never been able to since I was a little
Really?
kid. Yeah.
It's a blessing to be able to go to sleep.
You're right.
It is. The only thing that helps me is I listen to audiobooks to go to sleep, because my problem is my mind never shuts down. I can't physically make it shut down and stop thinking. If I lay in bed with nothing, I'll sit there and think of what I'm going to preach on the next Sunday or the next Wednesday night, or I'll have ideas.
Next
Do
year.
either of your parents have that kind of trouble too?
Yeah. So, but if I put on an audiobook, it gives my mind one thing to focus on, and then it helps me fall asleep. But it still takes me 30 minutes to an hour.
Well, there's not a Forensic Files I haven't seen. I usually do the 10 o'clock news, and then after that, the 10:30, I go over to Create and see Martha Stewart cook or Lydia cook, and then after that, it's America's Test Kitchen, so I see those two from 11 to 11:30, and then I'll switch over to Forensic Files. By then, I'm pretty well worn out, and so I can finally drift off. Although it's murder mysteries and mess like that, it's a quieter kind. You don't have all these banging cars and slamming doors.
No explosions.
And that kind of thing. So I managed to do okay with that one.
I'm such a rut, if you call that, go to bed between 9 and 9:30 and get up at 5. If I'm up to 10:15, 10:30, I am tired.
You're wiped out the
I'm
next
wiped
day.
out.
I am too. I go to bed at 10.
Yeah.
My granddad went to bed at 10 every night when he was a young man.
I
He
do
was
too.
staying awake half of the night.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be,
I was a cheap
I
date.
I stayed up late, but you know what it was, in my youth, I had the bad habit of smoking, and that nicotine would keep you awake. And I
Well,
would-
he was
I'd go to
studying
bed at
a
11
ball.
at night, 11:30, have to be up at work.
He was studying shorthand
Terrible habit.
at night and stoking a boiler to keep,
Yeah.
keep his heat going or something. I think it was out in Texas, I'm not sure. And so he developed this terrible, terrible cough. And it was just pneumonia, really. And so the doctor asked him, said, how much sleep are you getting? And he said, oh, I can't get much. He said, and he, of course, he was working during the day, going to school during the day and all that kind of stuff too. And he said, well, it's up to you. He said, you're not gonna do me any favors by living. And he said, if you want to go on and die, but that's what's gonna happen to you if you don't. Granddad said he would, the way he used to put it, he said, I won't go do him any favors if I die. So I decided I've got to do it. So most of the time, he would go on and get some sleep.
Where's Julia Stan?
We're not sure where anybody is.
Diane is.
Well, Diane's the only one that I
She's
feel.
not feeling well. I don't know about
feeling bad again, or?
Yeah.
She had to go back to the doctor
She
for
had
tests,
tests
didn't
the
she?
other day, something with her cold, really, really tender, she said.
So yeah, she's doing well. I don't know. And Aunt Julia might be having plane lag,
Yeah.
travel exhaustion.
She got back what, Sunday?
Got back
Tuesday, I thought.
Monday night.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty late. I think she had a good time.
I bet she did.
I hadn't seen her, Phyllis and the girls saw her yesterday.
I was kind of waiting to see if Tony would amble in here a little laughter. And
Wally and Phyllis.
I don't know where either of them are.
They went to, of course, they went to Knoxville over the weekend, and, they said Wally was just wiped out one day, I don't know, he took Monday, LL took Monday off and most of Tuesday, and then he just poured concrete this morning, I think, and then came on home and he worked all afternoon pressure washing, and,
Don't they ever stop? Don't they ever stop? I mean, Wally was wiped out last week. They were working 7 to
Yeah.
7 on that building and then somebody said the lettuce wasn't growing.
Hmm.
oh, really, I hadn't heard that, no, I haven't said that.
It was, Walt was telling me that last week.
We need some rain.
Well, no, this is hydroponics. So
Hydroponics.
Yeah, it's.
That's right.
That doesn't deny the fact that we still need some rain.
Well, right.
Yeah,
But
it's,
I was just explaining that the
That's
lettuce
what
didn't
I was
depend on it.
thinking, I was thinking of growing anything, and I thought,
We had
I wasn't
5
thinking
minute
of the
rain today.
hydroponics.
This afternoon. Did you have the 5 minute
Not,
rain?
not here.
ain't got dropped.
Well, it didn't hang on, that just wet the road.
It was a lot more further north, because Brittany said as they were loading kids onto the school bus, there came a nice little storm that blew through up there.
Yeah, it was probably around 3:30.
Yeah. Yeah, but she's a lot further north than you are, Diane.
Yeah, right. Maybe they had more of it.
But yeah, down here there was
So
nothing.
what kind of drive is she on?
Do you know where Maston Lake Road is?
Yeah.
In North Huntsville? She's at James Dawson, which is on Maston Lake Road, almost to 53. So she goes from, I say, one end of the parkway to the other end of the parkway.
She said hallelujah when they finished the overtime.
Yeah. We were singing.
I know I did.
We were singing praises.
I know I did, it's made a dramatic difference.
It's cut her commute by 10 minutes. You know, 2 miles has cut her commute by 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's just so nice to just be able to go.
That Kroger thing is a
Mrs.
mess.
Kaufman this morning, she said, guess where I am? I said, you already at work? She said, no. And I said, oh, you're behind the wreck, aren't you? She said, yep, I am.
It still doesn't
So I hadn't
change.
even made it to, Airport Road yet.
It still doesn't change. Having the new overpasses doesn't mean that everybody suddenly still knows how to drive again.
No.
What they ever did before.
Exactly. Alright, one more minute. At 6:10, we're starting with or without anybody else.
I don't know where Patty is, cause
I mean,
don't really talk
It's,
to her.
it's the last 2 chapters of Acts, people.
No, it's,
Talking about,
it's finished.
We're gonna get it finished, exactly.
let's see here. I wrote down.
That's alright. This is
I was
Is that-
started 5/16.
So
April, or May.
4 months. Oh, that's not. It's not.
May, June, July,
Not too bad,
a little over 3 months.
because we took 3 weeks off there in the
Yeah.
middle for the 4th and Bible school and whatnot. So not, I mean, it hasn't been too bad, but it still feels like we've been in Acts.
Forever.
And it's been a quarter of the year, so you know.
That's a lot of chapters, you know, when you only do one.
There's a lot of
week.
stuff packed in there.
It's very true.
A lot of them, we never even did one chapter.
But we're getting 2 done tonight. We're starting now. So chapter 27.
All right.
Let's go.
All right. In y'all's readings, was there anything that really stood out about chapter 27? Questions that you had?
I
I
guess
guess
that
I meant to read it,
I read it.
Paul's
but then my day fell.
premonition of bad coming, he knew it all along.
It knew the weather was. God told him the weather was going to be bad.
And
That's,
listen.
I did that. But there's a change of heart. The centurion doesn't listen, and I'm trying to remember what verse that was. I had it.
Yeah, I thought, I was impressed by, they treated him really nice.
Yes, the centurion treated him extremely nicely throughout this trip, except for the one part in 11 where Paul goes, "Hey, there's a storm coming," and he goes, "Nope."
Nope.
Listens to the captain instead.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting because you can even see. Let's talk about the centurion for a minute then. In verse
And the
1.
centurion, I thought, is a commander of 100 soldiers.
Yes, the commander of 100 soldiers. But this guy is even.
Centurion.
Yeah. This guy is even more impressive though. It says Paul and some of the other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. This is a little bit more than just a normal centurion that's given command. If he's in the imperial regiment, that means he is like the elite guard, the ones that get their orders from Caesar and only from Caesar. You know.
Mine says centurion Augustus band.
Yeah.
Which.
It's the Caesar guard, essentially. You're thinking, these are the highest ranking centurions there are. If he says something, it goes. You know, he has all sorts of rights and privileges. You know, all the other soldiers that are around him, even that they encounter, including fellow centurions, would have to answer to him because he doesn't, in the chain of command, he's in the emperor's personal regiment. You know, he answers to Caesar, no one else. They have to answer to their commander, and their commander has to answer to the commander, and their commander has to answer to the general, and the general answers to Caesar. He cuts out all the middleman there. So he has a lot of power. And you can see this, mine says, you know, and he finds a boat.
Which verse are you in?
And this is, he finds two different boats here. In verses, we boarded a ship, you know. And then in verse, I think it's 6. Oh yeah. Then the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. You notice there's no like haggling. These are trader ships. These are not.
Taking this.
These are not Roman, you know, warships. These are traders. This tells you how much pull the guy has because it says, "Hey, I've got my men and this group of prisoners, and you're going to take us." And they go, "Yes, sir." There's no. So he had no haggling. But as you said, he treats Paul very well throughout this. And you can almost see that he sees something in Paul, sees Paul's leadership, sees Paul's determination, sees something there. So he treats him with respect to the point where he listens to much of the advice, except in chapter 11, or verse 11, when Paul says, "Don't go with storming," and he takes the advice over the captains. But you also see he has a change of heart later on in verse 32 when they talk about cutting the lifeboat. I believe it is verse 31. Paul says, "No, cut the line and don't let them go." Conventional wisdom would say, "Yeah, put them on the lifeboat and let them try to get out of here." But this respect that he might has had from the beginning, or this niceties, has turned into something more for the centurion, because now he's actually listening to the prisoner Paul and taking life and death advice of how to save. So you can see the growth of understanding and belief in the centurion as he goes through this process of sailing and traveling with Paul.
Yeah, and before that, though, he'd already told them, "No loss of any man's life
Yeah,
among you, but of the ship."
yeah. And so
Was the angel.
he comes from this, I guess I'd say, grudging respect of a prisoner to actually belief in what this man is saying and doing. And I think for me, this transition from the centurion, it shows kind of what the people that are traveling Paul are going through from hey, this guy could have gotten free, you know, but he's still going before Rome. So a little bit of respect to slowly believing over all this time together.
There was a plan, I mean, maybe he could have stayed there and got free, but this is what he.
Yes, this was what he was supposed to do, and that God used the entire journey, stubbornness and all of these people that didn't want to go, to help change their hearts. So yeah, I like the character of the centurion in this. It's a wonderful. He's in itself a wonderful story. You could preach 2 sermons just on him and what he goes through. What else? What else did y'all see? Questions?
Well, I think it actually says that the centurion, somebody else would have probably killed the prisoners.
At the very end, yes.
Rather than let him escape, they would have killed him. And you know, he didn't do that.
Why? Do you know why they would have rather killed them than let them escape?
I guess they pay for it.
If the soldier guarding a prisoner let a prisoner escape, they would have to pay the, huh?
They'd have to pay with their life.
Well, they'd have to pay the sentence, whatever the sentence was. You know, 15 years. Okay, you're going to be locked. If it's a fine, it's a fine. Whatever it is, they had to pay for the prisoner's crimes that escaped. So and some of these prisoners are not the great. We don't know much about them. It doesn't say much about them, but some of them are probably not the greatest if they're having to be taken to Rome for imperial judgment.
But it just shows you, in that Roman culture, lower class prisoners, non-Roman citizens, life didn't mean much. I mean, you know, they would kill you at the drop of a hat.
Unless you were at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, I mean, unless you know.
Life order meant everything.
Because all of them weren't Roman citizens.
No,
I don't think.
probably not. Well, so we don't know, but probably not.
Yeah.
But I mean, order meant everything to them, and keeping everybody on their right path, doing what they were supposed to. So better to carry out an execution now than worry about having a mess up later. Yet he has come through this journey with Paul and has spent months at this point with Paul. Because if you look, they travel and then they're stuck in a port for a long period of time, and then another 2 weeks on the boat. So it's been months that they have been with Paul, and to have this transformation of their own life, of their own view, to the point where he's like, no, don't kill the slave, don't kill the slaves, don't kill the prisoners. What else? What else in 27 jumps out at you?
Must have had a lot of grain on this thing. They hadn't eaten for 14 days, and then told them all to eat because they needed their strength.
Well, yeah.
176 on board.
Now, I'm not sure I understood. Why were they fasting?
Well, they okay.
They were in suspense.
Were they just saving the food and?
No. All right.
They were, stressed.
You mean that the centurion and his soldiers were fasting also?
I don't. Does yours say they were actually fasting?
Mine says, it says, you have
What
tarried
verse?
and continued fasting, having taken nothing. When Paul is telling them to take meat, in verse 33.
It's not a religious fast.
I didn't think
It's
it
a
was.
fast of necessity. Something like that. I like that door back there.
Just to say the economy suspense and gone without.
No.
You have
I
any?
think that door. I accidentally locked that door or something. I think that was Tony trying to get in.
Is he going around?
Yes.
Yeah, he's coming around.
Sorry, Tony.
Somehow that door got locked back. Al came in that door. I know it was unlocked. I know it was unlocked.
understand, I'm not well. Today, you were
Now,
preaching
talking about
and the
that
door
gives the
opened.
crowd,
Yeah. Yeah.
There was,
All right.
the traffic was backed up back there, I don't know if there was an accident.
Well, we
Took the
heard,
little
I
back
heard
roads.
sirens, though.
Yeah.
Took the back roads.
going to talk about the boat for a second. All right, this would have been a grain boat. This is going to hopefully help explain why they hadn't been eating. All right, it's a grain boat. It is about 140 foot long and 40 foot wide. This is a very large boat. Okay, this is not a tiny boat. It has two masts. It has one main mast in the middle, huge thing, giant sail. That's the propulsion. And then there's a little guiding mast at the front. It doesn't do much but help change directions. This boat would have probably been steered not by a rudder, but by two men on deck with giant oars on each side. Okay? Now, this boat was long and wide and not very tall. And it's not meant for these harsh winter conditions. And the storm that they are entering into is a cyclone with hurricane force winds. So you're looking at 75 mile an hour sustained winds. Most of these boats in these kind of weather conditions would have that giant mast in the middle of the boat snap. And if it came down and pulled up from the bottom because it's so big, your boat sunk. That was it. So these hands-on-deck and soldiers were probably busy these 14 days trying to hold the boat steady, trying to make sure the sail wasn't ripping or blowing away, shoring up the mast, and you know that every one of them, they're sitting there. If they're throwing stuff overboard to lighten the boat, it means one thing. It means they're taking on water fast. So probably everybody with no other job has some kind of bucket or shoe or something and is bailing out water as fast as they possibly can. They really haven't had a moment's peace to stop and eat.
Now, was that to me, I thought that's a long, continuous storm. Do you think that was common in those times? Or was this, I don't say divine intervention making it storm maybe, but that just seemed like a long storm.
Well, it was a long storm, but you also had the preamble up to it and everything else. But I mean, think of how slow some of the tropical storms move. And think of, I'm trying to remember the one last year in the ocean did this little, did this short little loop and it literally went over the same spot for 6 days. It could have been something like that, because I mean, this is a cyclone, so the thing is spinning. And it's not just coming in a straight line of storms. And it might have just, looped around, and it could have run around them at least one giant loop. It would have caused them to be at least stuck in that rain or the dissipating bands of it for weeks on end. So yes, I mean, that's
Ordeal.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been equivalent like Christopher Columbus sailing through a hurricane trying to find America. That's it. There's no protection, no land, and your boat's not built for this. So when I read this, you have the 276 people that are on board. Half of those are probably prisoners, so they're probably chained up in the holds, unable to do anything. All hands that are available are probably bailing water, throwing things overboard, holding the line steady, trying to maintain this boat and keep it from sinking. So there really hasn't been any time for anybody to say, hey guys, anybody want to stop and have lunch?
Right.
They might have tried to grab something as they're going, but right now their thought has been survive, survive, survive. Keep this boat afloat. Maybe we can find shore. So I think that, for me, when I read it, that's why I see they haven't eaten anything, because they've been so worried about their own survival.
And then I noticed he said again, I pray for you to take some meat, this is your help. He said again, there shall not an hair fall from the head of any of you. He's telling them again that they're all going to survive.
Yep. He's telling me at that point, he's saying, look, you need to eat because God's going to make this possible. And it's not going to be easy. You need some strength. Stop, trust God for 10 minutes and eat some food.
Yeah, that doesn't say needed, just
Mine says grain. So it's just, eat. You need to eat something to get your strength up. Alright?
Mine said bread.
Yeah. So that's why it is. I mean, these ships are massive. They're big old trade ships. They're not meant to sail. In fact, in those times, you didn't sail after the Day of Atonement. You do not sail in winter months in that sea. The seas are just too rough. They should have never left port. But the captain and the ship owner said, "Oh, look, we have a good wind. We can outrun any storm that's going to come up." Well,
So which sea were they in?
this will be part of the Mediterranean Sea.
Okay.
The south of Crete.
Yeah.
I should have known that because of it.
And then after they ate, I guess they were saving it last, they threw the wheat out.
Yeah, I said again.
Didn't they think eat again?
Well, it was survived.
Well, it's, again, they know that surely they need to be coming up on land or something, and one of their biggest fears is they're weighed down in the seas, and they can't control which direction the sea is going to push them. Again, this is not I can't remember who was the Persian triangle sail where you could tack against the wind. Big square sail. There's no tacking against the wind. The wind blows and you go. So let's say they were afraid that after not knowing where they are, that at any moment they could be blown up against a reef or a sandbar and completely destroy the ship. So by lightening it again, getting as much out, including the water that they had been taking on for 14 days, they're raising that depth of the ship. So maybe, just maybe, if they come to a reef, they won't crash upon it and destroy the entire ship. That is what eventually happens. But at that point, they're close enough to shore that they're able to either swim or grab onto some of the wreckage and float to shore. They try. It was, at that point, it's like, hey, all right,
There's land.
full speed ahead. There's a sandbar, but I think we can get close enough.
This one just says one safely on shore.
Yes.
Sounds like their boat's okay.
No, the boat is not okay. Now you,
Because if you look at the last one, there's some of them on boards, and on some of them broken pieces of the ship, so.
Yeah, that's
the
a-
ship was destroyed.
verse 40, my verse 41 says, "But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground." So what they feared was going to happen happened, but this time they were close enough to shore. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding surf. So essentially, the bow hits, the front hits, and it's stuck. It's not moving. You've got the giant hurricane waves, as I call them, coming in and smashing, and it's just being punished. So they're grabbing on, and they're.
That's when the soldiers' advice was to kill the prisoners,
Mhm.
at least any of them should swim out and escape. And as you said, the centurion, willing to save Paul,
Yeah.
I said,
Spare Paul's life.
kept them from their purpose.
He said he was had so much respect and belief in Paul now he wanted to spare all their lives. So
I wonder how many prisoners were
Well, I said there was 276 people, and Will said probably half of them.
so if you, I can't say for
100
sure.
were centurions.
I can say if the centurion has his men, that's 100 for soldiers, and then you have the ship's crew. And how many say it's 276?
Yeah.
So my guess is maybe 100 to 150 were prisoners, and then another 25 to 75 were crew, or it's crew and traders, because there could have been traders or other passengers on that ship that were carrying the goods. So that would be my guess, between 100 and 150 prisoners, and then 75 to 25 actual crew people on the ship. But I mean, we don't know for sure. That's just my guess.
If you'd been at the Bible school, you would have known about the hitching and throwing everything overboard.
And you know how good the
I was
kids.
just wondering what those boxes were back there that stayed stacked up. He had brought all those over there.
That was my grain bags and my tags that the kids threw overboard when they were reacting to sounds.
Right up there.
I didn't know nothing, you Sherry, stuck.
This is too funny.
Anything else on 27?
No, I think we got him there safely.
Got them there safely, and
Every one of them.
everyone. And can you imagine the looks on their faces when they all got destroyed and they're looking around going, "We all made it." You're kidding, right?
He said we would.
He said God promised that we're. I mean, think of how that transformed many of their lives. We should never have even made it to the sandbar, much less everybody arrived here alive on the shore. The impossibility of it was staggering. Like I said, those ships, the big grain ships, were not meant to weather those types of storms. So it was a true miracle. I just want to share with y'all, as I said, this is probably my favorite chapter in the book of Acts. I just love this story because for me, I can learn so many different things from Paul, and I want to share with y'all the things that I get from Paul. And if y'all have anything to add, I want you to add those as well. The first is listen to God. God said you're going to get through it. God reminded him of his promise that he was going to get to Rome. Listen to God. Second, trust in what God tells you. Third, and here's where I get it. Remain calm in difficult situations. Can you imagine how much steadfastness, perseverance, strength it would have taken Paul to stand up to this crazed crew, to this centurion and soldiers in the midst of this storm and say, God's going to protect you. Stop. Breathe. Eat. It's going to be okay. And that presence of mind and that strength to remain calm, and not just that, but to speak up in those situations, to encourage others in those situations to do and to take care of themselves.
That takes such a different type person, as I say, to not lose your head when everybody around you is losing theirs. And I know, and just when my daughter's been sick or they had a fever and you didn't, I'm not good at that. I mean, I was kind of going like, how about you, Tony? You pretty calm and those kind of things?
I get nervous.
I do. I mean, I just know one day Phyllis fainted and she cut herself and saw the blood and fainted.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, I couldn't get her to come. I didn't know. I need to call 911 right now, and I realized I got all excited and I wasn't real good at that.
Yeah.
Well, when you love somebody, and when it's somebody family-wise,
It's even harder.
and yes, it is, much, much harder.
But it's just like you read stories and it comes out in, unfortunately, in war. The little scrawny guy may be the one that can keep people calm, and the big athlete, football player is crying in the corner.
Yeah.
You never know how you're going to react in those circumstances, and hope you never have to.
And yes, hope you never have to. But I said that's just something I draw from this. It's just that presence to stay calm. And it's just like, and as to speak up, share, and not just stay calm, but to encourage others. It's like the little guy that holds people together in the war. It's like, or when you're the guy, you hear the stories. I know my granddad told some of Korea. It's like we're in the jungle. The guy that says we're gonna make it home. We're gonna make it home. That guy. That gives you the courage and the hope.
We don't have
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. Not the ones going, every man for himself, I'm getting in the lifeboat. Yeah, not that guy. The guy says, hold on, it's going to be okay. And the last thing that really just jumps out for that is the fact that despite all this, Paul is looking out for other people above himself. And it's not just, all right, God, get me through this, and who cares about what happens to the rest of them? He's looking out to make sure other people are okay. So when I read that, it's just to me, sums up Paul's ministry in this one amazing miracle and horrible occurrence that happens that these people have to go through. So, anything else in 27? All right, 28. I'm going to start with, I'm going to ask y'all a question first, and we'll feed in. So, my first question is, and answer honestly, okay? Does the story in verse 3 through 6 mean that we should start bringing vipers and using them in church again?
No. Those have gone wrong.
Okay.
Those have gone wrong.
What was that, Miss Sarah?
I changed the
Sorry, I read this. I had a friend in my other Bible study group that sent me a news recording of one of the last snake handling churches in South Carolina, I think, up in the Coal Mountains. The pastor was officially retiring after 20 years of service because he finally got bit. But the thing was, the article was, because they talked to somebody, his father died, was a pastor, and died from a snake bite.
They just didn't have enough faith.
And then you, and I guess it had to get. It was recorded, of course, in this day and age. Somebody had their smartphone out and recorded the entire service, and the guy got bit, and he kept preaching. I mean, he kept singing, and they kept preaching. He said, "I believe that God will help me. I believe in God," and he kept going. And I'm one of those guys that's like, God gave you the guy in the back with the phone number for 911. Use it. Because if you're standing up there in your faith, you believe that God is going to help you, and you're not getting better yet, then God has a different plan for you at this point.
You ever read Salvation on Sand Mountain?
I don't believe I have.
A journalist in Birmingham wrote the book, and he had gone up to one of the snake handling churches on Sand Mountain, and I think he even handled some of the snakes or something, but he just wanted to know about the experience, and he wrote a book about the whole, and that's what it's called, Salvation on Sand Mountain.
But
They're still active, aren't they?
I think,
No.
some of them are, yeah.
and they're slowly going out just because of the they're dying out.
The snakes,
The pastors who are called to those churches are a dying breed. That's right. I said that article and you sort of just so funny because and he kept preaching 20 years after his dad had passed away from being bitten by the snake in the same church, and I'm like, I'm sitting there just shaking my head, going, "We're not all Paul." I said, "Did God promise you that you were going to Rome? If so, okay. If not, but
Have you ever heard of the Cowboy Church, though? I wonder if that's a snake.
there's not very many ones that are snake handling anymore. Some of them will have snakes, but very few of them, like this church, actually, again, people within there showed two good old boys with a box and a bag going out to the woods before the service to catch the rattler to use. You know, I'm sitting there going,
Donna Smith, my youngest daughter's best friend, worked up at Redbird Mission. She taught up at Redbird Mission. And they were going somewhere one night, and there were these guys along the roadside, and they had bags and everything, and they were out looking for snakes for the next Sunday service.
I admire the faith and their belief that God can get them through all situations, but for me personally, and God also gave you some common sense. And gave you some reason.
Besides faith, he gave you a mind.
Yeah, so and he encourages you to think. So, okay, so if this particular message about the snakes, and I know y'all love to talk about animals. If it